Ladies and gentlemen, Secretary of Health RFK Jr. just dropped an absolute bombshell, and I'll tell you what, folks, this actually changes everything. You see, just yesterday afternoon, RFK Jr. exposed a secret, intentionally buried 1999 study from the CDC, and like I said, what this now released study has revealed changes everything. This study that the CDC intentionally kept hidden for over 25 years reveals that the hepatitis B vaccine, which became one of the CDC's recommended vaccines for newborn infants in 1991, actually increases the risk of autism by a whopping 1,135%. Folks, what that means is that infants that receive this vaccine are 10 times more likely to become autistic than infants that don't receive this vaccine. But you know what? Don't take it from me. Take a listen to what RFK Jr. had to say about all of this for himself.
What you would do if you wanted to find the answer, which is to compare outcomes in a fully vaccinated group to health outcomes in an unvaccinated group. And CDC did that study in 1999. They brought in a team of scientists under a Belgian researcher named Thomas Verstraeten, and they looked at the data. They looked at children who had received the hepatitis vaccine within the first 30 days of life and compared those children to children who had received the vaccine later or not at all. And they found an 1,135% elevated risk of autism among the vaccinated children. And it shocked them. They kept the study secret, and they manipulated it through 5 different iterations to try to bury the link. And, we know how they did it. They got rid of all the older children, essentially, and just had younger children who were too young to be diagnosed. And they stratified the data, and they did a lot of other tricks. And all of those studies were the subject of that kind of trickery.
And so, folks, there you have it. Conclusively, without a shadow of a doubt, we now know exactly what's been going on. Like I said, in 1991, the hepatitis B vaccine became recommended by the CDC for all newborn babies in the USA, and shortly after, as the hepatitis B vaccine became increasingly administered, autism rates in the US began to absolutely skyrocket. In fact, in just around 25 years now, autism rates amongst Americans exclusively have increased from 1 in 1,000 all the way up to 1 in 36. Very clearly, something has changed that is causing this drastic increase in the prevalence of autism. But here's the worst thing about all of this. The CDC's manipulation and obfuscation of data regarding the increased risk of autism associated with the hepatitis B vaccine completely betrays the trust that we're all supposed to have in our national health agencies. But now, folks, I want you all to take a quick look at what the left-wing media is saying about all of this. But first, I do want to say real quick that if you guys enjoy the daily news updates, please consider subscribing to the channel because it really does help a ton. But okay, check this out.
I think what he's setting up is to declare in his autism report in the fall that there's a link between alum and autism. I think that's where this is heading if I was to make a prediction. If he does that, that will open the door to litigation under the Vaccine Injury Compensation Program and create a whole wave of lawsuits that I think will drive a lot of vaccine makers out of the market. You could see companies
So he won't even stop them from doing it. He will do it through the lawsuits, and that will make the companies say, forget it.
Well, he's always seen litigation as a tool to try to achieve his objectives.
And so, folks, let's break all of this down. Wanting our vaccines to be thoroughly tested and well-researched doesn't make you some sort of crazy anti-vaxxer, as all of the far-left progressives would have you believe. Really, it just means that you're an intelligent, conscientious person that wants to know exactly what it is that you're injecting into your body. Maybe some people don't know this, but vaccine manufacturers here in America have a very unique legal immunity that shields them from responsibility for manufacturing faulty or defective products, unlike other industries where manufacturing a faulty product can result in some pretty serious consequences. And so what the progressive left is doing is acting like vaccine manufacturers shouldn't be held to the very same standards as every other type of manufacturing business. The reality is, if you make a faulty product and it ends up injuring people or getting people killed, you should be held accountable for that, plain and simple. And so here's my opinion. RFK Jr.'s endeavor to make vaccines safe and reliable is in complete and total alignment with President Trump's mission to make America great again. Because in order for America to be great, we all need to be healthy and taken care of, rather than intentionally deceived by money-hungry vaccine manufacturers. But you know what, folks? Take a look at this. Speaking of money-hungry vaccine manufacturers and faulty vaccines, right this very moment, Senator Rand Paul is in the process of holding Anthony Fauci accountable for his involvement in the recent pandemic. As Rand Paul said just yesterday afternoon, many of us were called conspiracy theorists for questioning whether or not COVID-19 started because of a lab leak. After all, Anthony Fauci and the National Institute of Health had been funding dangerous gain-of-function research. I referred Dr. Fauci for prosecution under both President Biden and President Trump, and now I'm gearing up to subpoena him to testify under oath in front of Congress. Stay tuned. And so, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. As it would seem, Dr. Anthony Fauci's days as a free man are numbered. Keep in mind, if Rand Paul calls Anthony Fauci to testify in front of Congress under oath, it would mean that if he were to lie, he'd be committing perjury, which is a very serious federal crime. And you know what? Let's be honest here for a moment. The only reason that Anthony Fauci received a sweeping, preemptive presidential pardon from Joe Biden, or whoever was operating the auto pen, is because with almost 100% certainty, he's guilty of something. And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, take a look at this.
He got immunity. Why did he need immunity? Why did he need a pardon in advance?
What do you think the answer is?
I would be speculating, but I think he was vulnerable. I think he had a lot of liability on creating coronavirus. He was funding precisely that research at the Wuhan lab.
And so, folks, there you have it. Anthony Fauci is guilty of something, and everybody knows it. I'll tell you guys the most ironic thing about this entire situation. As I'm sure you all remember, up until the end of 2019, when the COVID-19 pandemic began, it was always the people on the far left side of the aisle that were super critical of the evil pharmaceutical industry. But now, because of the Trump derangement syndrome and all of the COVID-era propaganda and far-left mind control, every single member of the progressive left will fight tooth and nail to defend their beloved pharmaceutical companies, acting like they're all infallible. So really, at this point, the entire country sees the progressive left for what they really are, a bunch of hypocritical, anti-American idiots. And you know what? As far as I'm concerned, that's fine by me, because over here on the right side of the aisle, we have got a country to save. Now, ladies and gentlemen, before we wrap up, I do want to say real quick that we officially have a Morse News Twitter page as well as a Morse News Facebook page. So if you use either of those platforms, please go down below and drop a follow in order to get breaking news updates that relate to everything we talk about here in the YouTube videos. But everyone, that is going to be a wrap for today's video, so please go down below and drop a comment. Let me know what you think about all of this. Please like the video while you're down there, and like I said earlier, please consider subscribing to the channel because it really does help a ton. Thank you all very much for tuning in today, and of course, as always, stay safe.